Welcome to the Fernbridge Farm Podcast. I'm Kelly.
I'm Bob. This is Willie.
And this is our very first podcast episode for the farm. And we're going to cover a whole lot of different topics about our sheep and our chickens and things we're making and projects related to the farm, and as well as fiber arts. I'm a knitter and he is a fairly new knitter.
Casual knitter.
But we're also going to share things from Bob's workshop too. He's a woodworker and works with metal and likes to build lots of things. So just a little taste of things to come. And just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I am I'm a shepherd now, a full-time shepherd, and I went to the University of Vermont and studied animal science. So my background is animal science based. I was co-owner of a yarn shop for the last 6 years, which I just retired from. And so I have a strong background in both animals and arts and everything. So that's kind of my strong suit, and you'll be hearing a lot about the animals and the fiber arts from me.
My turn?
Yep.
So, all right, background. Kelly and I met in college. I went for the sciences and manage a service team for a medical device company. Really is getting more anxious here. So around the farm here, I'm kind of the builder of things. Certainly the apprentice shepherd, occasionally helping to wrestle sheep and whatnot, point them in the right direction. Yeah, like Kelly said, enjoy the building things, and I'm learning an awful lot about sheep and the animal side of things. It's more her strength. I do knit the occasional project, but as she said, wood and metal is a little bit more my medium, at least for now. So looking forward to sharing with you what we got going here.
And this is Willie. Willie is a Gordon setter, and he's almost 10. And he loves chasing all things. 4-footed, 2-footed, doesn't matter. But he's a really sweet guy. So he's one of our dogs. We also have an English Cocker Spaniel who's actually behaving herself right now.
And we frankly expected more outtakes from her.
Which we may have to in future episodes because she loves to bark. And then the other animal we have living in the house with us is a cat whose name is Shoo. And she, I'm sure, will at some point make her presence known too. So those are all the introductions for everybody. And you can find the farm in all kinds of different places. We have an Instagram account, which is Fernbridge Farm, and the Facebook account is the same. You can just search for Fernbridge Farm. And we have a website too, Fernbridge Farm. We happen to get all of the various social media that we typically post to. So most active on Instagram and Facebook, and then too on our website. And we'll talk a little bit more about the website towards the end of the podcast when I talk about some of the products that we have from our sheep that are available. But now we're going to talk a little bit about the farm, give you a brief introduction, and if all the editing goes well, I'm hoping to be able to pop some pictures in. So I've done some editing, but I have a new program, so we'll see how it goes. So about the farm, Fernbridge Farm, we started the farm last year in the middle of the pandemic. We've had horses on our property for years. I've had horses for a very long time, since I was in high school, and that was my concentration in college. And then a couple of years ago I made the transition to sheep, and so we have a small farm right now. It's about 6.5 acres, and we have 20 sheep on the farm currently. We started with 9, and in just a year's time it's grown to 20. They are Shetlands, and I'm sure as the podcast goes on, we'll talk more about why we chose the Shetland sheep in particular. And we also do raise chickens for eggs. So we have a number of chickens, different breeds of chickens on the farm, and we'll, I'm sure at some point you'll be able to see those too. So it is actually January 3rd, is that right? January 3rd today?
I believe that's correct.
It's a very cold day today, so I don't have any video from from the outside world today. But as the weather improves, and just as I have some footage, I'll be, inserting some video so that you can kind of get an idea of life on the farm, and we'll definitely have some of that as we go forward. We have some different things coming up with the sheep that we'll talk about, and I'm gonna get some video of the different activities as they're happening. So. Is there anything else I should mention about the farm?
No, you caught that it's cold, so that's...
Yeah, so we're based in Vermont, and so we do have all 4+ seasons here, and we're in the Champlain Valley of Vermont, so not too far from Burlington, not too far from Middlebury, if you're familiar with Vermont at all, if you're watching from somewhere not in Vermont. And yeah.
We're in the Champlain Valley, so we're nestled right up next to the lake, not on the lake per se, but not very far away. So, like Kelly said, about halfway between Burlington and Middlebury if you're surfing Google Maps.
All right, so we're gonna kind of have some different segments as we go along, and we'll try to introduce those as we go so you kind of know what to expect. I'm hoping to be able to timestamp stuff in show notes as I do things, so that if there's something more of interest to you, you can kind of skip to that, and we'll do our best to get show notes in. Those will be on our website, so I'll be posting them there with links to the video, and if you're watching this, you're probably either watching it through the website or YouTube, because YouTube is where this is going to live. So our first segment after our introduction is from the barn, and so that's going to kind of include anything sheep and chicken related, and so I thought that I would talk today a little bit about our breeding program. So we just actually got done with breeding season here on the farm. A couple weeks ago, we decided it was time that the rams could go back to their own pastures and the ewes could have a nice peaceful winter. So we actually bred on the farm. We had 2 breeding groups, 2 different rams, and we bred 7 ewes on the farm. Or we at least exposed them to the rams. We're gonna hopefully be doing some vet checks, ultrasounds a little bit later on, and we'll talk about that too. But so 7 ewes that we bred on the farm, and then I actually purchased 2 ewes from off the farm that were bred away from the farm at a really lovely farm in New Hampshire. So we have 9 ewes potentially bred. That means a lot of little lambs this spring, and yeah, fingers crossed for sure that we'll have lots of little lambs springing around the farm this year. And I didn't mention kind of in the intro about the farm, we had 2 lambs born on the farm this spring, and we had bred 2 ewes last fall, and only one of them settled. So we do have 2 ewes from her, Little Jensen and Juniper. So we've got lots of pictures from them. So if you visit our Instagram page, you'll find all kinds of pictures of Jensen and Juniper, and as well a lot of our other sheep. So at some point maybe we'll do like a little introduction of all of the sheep with pictures, so that you'll be able to see that. But I have done a lot of that on the website, and I've got to put all the new sheep on there though. I haven't done that. But we will have, so Willie's scaring himself with the lights. So we will have ultrasounds coming up. So like end of February, early March, I'll have the vet come and do some ultrasounds just to get an idea of who is pregnant and how many potential lambs that they might be having, which makes things a little bit easier as lambing actually starts. We'll know how many to kind of expect from the different ewes. And then about 4 weeks before lambing starts, we will have our shearer come out, and we have a fantastic shearer named Siri, and she'll come out and get everybody shorn, keep things clean for when the lambs do come, and then we'll do some vaccinations of the ewes ahead of time, just so that they'll be carrying the antibodies. They'll be passing on the antibodies to the lambs through the colostrum when the lambs start nursing. So, and then lambing season for us, because we opted to breed a little bit later in the year. We put the rams in with the ewes on the 30th of November. So that means we're going to be lambing in late April, early May. So somewhere in there, that kind of window. So, which is nice for us because we're breeding for wool. We don't have any dates that we're trying to hit for specific holidays for people that do meat breeds for sheep. So we're breeding for wool, and so we have the luxury of pushing our lambing dates back a little bit, so it's actually getting a little warmer before. So, which is nice because our lamb that did our ewe that lamb this spring went into full-on labor at 2 o'clock in the morning. So it'll be nice that it'll be a little bit warmer. So they were born on April 23rd. So it wasn't too bad. It wasn't super cold, but it's always nicer that time of year rather than March.
But of course, she got shorn about a month earlier,
Yeah.
and we immediately had a cold snap.
We did, yeah. But we can push shearing back a little bit this year, so that'll be a little bit warmer when they're shorn. So yeah, that's kind of what's happening from the barn right now, other than it being really cold and having to make lots of water trips, breaking ice out of buckets.
And as a fiber farm, you skipped over, well, you didn't skip over, you went quickly past the spring shearing. So lots more fiber to go off to the mill, right?
That's right. I was definitely going to talk a little bit about that from the shop section when we talk about the yarn and roving that we've got available. But we do have some available, and I'll talk a little bit about that and show what we've got available towards the end of the segment. But we'll have a lot more after this spring. So once the spring shearing happens, then I have to get to work skirting fleeces, cleaning them up, and then I get them off to a mill. We have a great local mill in White River Junction. It's called Junction Fiber Mill, and Peggy and Amanda started the mill this year, and they're doing a fantastic job and did a wonderful job spinning my yarn. And we'll have even more colors, natural colors. That's one great thing about Shetlands is they have 11 recognized colors, so you can get quite a variety just of the natural colors before you even start dyeing. And then we do have some naturally dyed yarns as well. So
sorry, didn't mean to push the
fine.
Didn't mean to push the fiber talk on you.
Not a problem. We were gonna get there, but so do you have anything else to add from the barn?
Farm-wise, no. We're just trying to keep the chickens warm and keep them laying and keep the sheep happy, which is not too difficult with animals who wear wool sweaters all year round. So
yeah, the winter time is kind of a nice time for the farmer because you get a little bit of a rest and you get to plan other aspects of your business because there's not a whole lot to do other than feeding and watering and general care of the animals throughout the winter after breeding season is done anyway. And then so you've got a couple months before you start ramping back up for lambing and all of the things that encompasses. So winter is definitely a nice time to kind of plan some other things and take a little bit of a breath. So it's a good time to start a podcast, I guess.
You heard it here first. Winter is a great time in Vermont.
I love winter. So I grew up in Vermont, and so I put on the really warm layers, and I was fine out there this morning. It was 7 degrees, I think, when I got up with a wind chill that made it feel like 2 below, and went right out, did my chores, and I was perfectly warm and happy to be outside moving around. So
I made breakfast.
Which was much appreciated after doing all the chores outside to come in and have breakfast. So yeah, it was great. So, want to move on to our next segment?
Sure.
So our next segment we're calling Making, and there'll be little subsections within that. So we don't have a lot other than fiber arts for this, but if Bob is working on some different metal or woodworking projects, then we'll also include that in a little subsection in here. So this segment this time is going to be heavily based on knitting. So we'll talk about things that we're wearing, like a me made section, anything that we're wearing that we've made ourselves, and we'll have finished objects if we have any, which we won't always, because life. And then we'll have a work in progress, and we'll also have things that we're thinking about planning or doing, and go from there. And we'll give you as much information on the different projects that we're working on, and we'll have all that info in show notes. So if you miss something, definitely check out show notes, or just send us a message too. You can write on our website. There's a contact form, so you can message us there. I'm not always good about seeing messages on Facebook or Instagram, but you can try there too, and I will do my best to keep an eye on that. So, and also the comments section on YouTube is a great place to ask any questions, because those get sent to us as emails, and we will see them. So, all right, so we are both wearing me-made things.
You're looking at me like I'm up first.
Sure, go for it.
All right, so I'm wearing a hat that I knit last year, I want to say, probably.
I think it was.
So a little while ago, but it's one I wear fairly commonly.
Yes.
You would like to say?
Well, I was going to say, I didn't say in introductions, but I do have a Ravelry account. We don't have a Ravelry account set up for Bob, but we probably should do that, so he can keep track of his projects in there. But I do have a Ravelry account, so if you want to find me on Ravelry, I'm Kelly Spins on Ravelry, and until we get an account set up for Bob, we'll put all the information in show notes anyway. So he won't have any pictures that it links to, like Ravelry, like I'll link to in my Ravelry, but at least you'll have the info. So, sorry to interrupt.
That's fine. I've heard of Ravelry. You'll have to introduce me to the rest of it. So this is, the hat I'm wearing is 2x2 by...
And Gagnon. Gagnon.
Gagnon, yeah. And I will probably turn to Kelly often, as I do with most of my knitting projects. And usually these start out by seeing something on Instagram, or in looking over her shoulder of something that she's flipping through and saying, I like that, it looks like I could do that. My follow-up question is usually, is that going to frustrate me? And sometimes she says yes, and you probably won't see those on the Me Made section of the show. So in any case, but no, this was, even by my standards, pretty straightforward. I will say of my knitting, part of my role here on the show is to make you feel better about your knitting. I'm not great at this. I'm horrendously slow. I would expect at some point we'll probably be knitting while we're doing the show, and you'll see both of these things, I'm sure. I often hand my projects to Kelly and say, something bad happened, fix this. So that's kind of the stage of where I'm at in my knitting hobby. But in any case, this was a pretty straightforward project to do. Remind me, I know the yarn is Wing and a Prayer Farm, all the single
ladies. Yep.
Yeah, I got that right.
Yep, so it's her Shetland yarn from her Shetland ewes, and she does a big batch. She takes all of her Shetland ewe yarn and does a big batch and makes this great single ply yarn. It's made at Green Mountain Spinnery down in Putney, Vermont. It's very similar to their mountain mohair. It doesn't have mohair in it. It's just the 100% Shetland wool. But Tammy is a friend of ours, and she has a lovely farm in outside of Bennington, Shaftesbury, Vermont. And she's got great social media. So I'm sure if you're finding us, you've probably heard of her. So definitely give her a look if you haven't seen her farm. She does great Instagram, primarily through Instagram videos and posts, and she's very, very active there and has a wonderful farm. So, and we have some of our initial flock are sheep from her, so you'll see some of her sheep here on the farm. So
yeah, and I was gonna sort of throw in related to that. So none of the sheep that we've gotten from Tammy are in this hat, but their genetics are. So
their moms and their aunties are.
That's kind of fun for us too. So other than that, you want me to just kind of keep going?
Well, I can talk about my sweater.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll talk, and then we can move from.
Oh, right, because this is what we're wearing, not.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yep. So
this is also my first podcast, so.
Yeah, I've done some podcasting before, so if I look familiar at all, especially to knitting people out there, I was co-owner of Must Love Yarn in Shelburne, Vermont, and we had a podcast. We started the podcast just after we opened, so we had done the podcast for close to 6 years, probably about five and a half years. So if you're wondering why I might look familiar, that's why. So I'm a little bit rusty because it's been a couple months since I podcast. Anyway, we'll kind of make the best of it. I remember our first podcast we did, and I told people, I'm like, please don't go back and watch that. To people who like kind of came in at like 100 episodes in, they're like, oh, I'm going to go back and watch all the old ones. I'm like, don't, you're not missing anything. So I am wearing, so for the Me Made section, this is a sweater I made a few years ago. It is called Larch. It's a Pam Allen pattern from the book Plain and Simple, which there's a lot of great patterns in there. And the yarn that I used is Quince & Co. Owl. That's actually all of the patterns in that book, Plain and Simple, use the owl for all of those patterns. So I did use it, and it's super warm, so I usually tend to wear this sweater on really cold days. It has little pockets down here, which you probably can't see unless I go like this, because the way we've got the camera angled, but it's a really oversized sweater. The owl is alpaca and wool, so it's super, super warm, and it's got like the tunic neck on it, so it's always just a really cozy one to wear on a super cold day, and so that's what I'm wearing. So, you've got an FO, because you finished something recently.
Yep, I was going to roll into that, but
awesome.
I'm happy to let you do. So this is a hat, so is this the first FO out of our own sheep?
Yeah.
So this is a hat that I made from Tilly's yarn. So if you know any of our sheep at all, you probably know Tilly.
You'll definitely hear about Tilly.
She's heavily featured on the social medias, and
especially at the very beginning when we started the farm, because she's our friendliest sheep, or one of our friendliest sheep now, because we've got some others. Some of the babies are super friendly.
Yep. So this is from her first shearing.
That's her lamb fleece.
Her lamb fleece.
That's why it's so much darker.
Yep. Right. Yeah, she is not quite this dark now. So this is from her lamb fleece, and you totally manually processed this, correct? So, box picked it and carded it, spun it, the whole deal, so Kelly did most of it, and then I kicked it over the finish line and actually knitted this. So I don't know if you want to tell them about how you process the yarn. Go ahead if you would like to.
You mean as far
I
as...
don't remember, was it single, did you do the single
No,
ply or double ply?
it's a double ply.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's a 2-ply, and it kind of came out like a pretty, kind of like a heavy DK light worsted. It's kind of what I spun it to, and the hat. So I cast on the hat for him, and it's loosely based on the Spicer hat, which is a free pattern that's available from the Blue Sky Fibers website. That's one of my favorite yarns, the wool stock. So when I actually had my yarn spun, I gave him a sample of the wool stock so they would have an idea of what I was looking for my yarn. It's a great all-around woolen spun kind of yarn. So I knew that based on how I typically spin, I'm a long draw or supported long draw. That's kind of my go-to. So when I sit down, and if I don't have anything in mind, that's kind of what I sit down to spin. And it makes the yarn, especially the 2-ply, makes the yarn very similar to that. So I can use it for a lot of patterns that they recommend the wool stock for. So this is the Spicer hat. It's by Nancy Eckfall. It's available on Ravelry. We'll link to that. It's not exactly the Spicer, but it's similar.
So like most of my stuff, pretty super simple, 2x2 rib at the bottom, and then lots of knitting before did the decreases, which was what I was looking for. And I probably went about 4 laps too many. I probably should have started my decreases. Oh, I don't know, do we want to talk about laps?
You can talk about laps if you'd like.
Sorry. I don't know. When I first started knitting, when I would go around the needles, it just felt like a lap to me. And Kelly said, "What the heck are you talking about?" And I don't know. I said, I went around once. That's a lap, right? So ever since, they've been sort of tongue-in-cheek as laps. But anyway, probably went a little longer than I would have liked to. I don't like undoing things that I've done in knitting, so just kind of rolled with it into the decreases. So it's a little bit slouchy, but that's okay. It's Tilly makes a super warm wool. So
it looks really good on though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different. He a lot of times will flip up and wear the brim rolled, so he'll wear them like a super small beanie too. So this hat was kind of in between. It was a little bit too short to be able to roll it when he got done, but it was also longer than he was expecting it to be. But I think it looks good.
Yeah. So
it's definitely good for a super cold day where you want to be able to cover your ears completely.
Yeah. And you felted this a little bit, right?
I did. I folded it a little bit. So yeah, just kind of switching between hot and cold water rinses, just to kind of get the fibers to really pull together and make it just a little bit smaller. He actually, surprisingly, so many people, when they start knitting, they knit really tightly, and he did not at all, which really surprised me. So I was like, wait, your tension is so loose. And it's not terribly common when people start knitting. So he's a bit of an anomaly. So.
Well, I also like stitches that other people don't like. I prefer. Yeah. What is my preferred decrease stitch?
He prefers SSKs over knit 2 together. And what was the other thing? You don't mind purling.
No, in a way it makes more sense to me. But.
Yeah, he likes purling. So, which, a lot of knitters, if you're knitters that are watching us, you'll know that a lot of times most people prefer the knit 2 together over the SSK and knitting over purling. But hey, to each their own, right? So, yeah. And then the pom-pom on top is actually some of our yarn that we had processed at the mill. I had a little bit left over. And, I have finished objects that I can show. I'll show them next time because we don't want our first podcast to get way out of hand with timing. And it'll give me something to talk about next time. Because I knit, because I had that trunk show and I knit.
All right.
I knit some hats. Yep. So, whatever. It's fine. We don't need to bore y'all for the first podcast.
We'll bore you next week.
Yeah, we'll bore you next week. Yeah, because I have a tendency to keep talking when I should stop talking.
I'll pinch you below the side of the camera.
I'll be like, hey. So you have an FO.
All right. There's my Well,
Cool.
so you're not going to introduce an FO this week?
I won't talk about my FOs because I have to go downstairs and grab them, and I won't do that. I'll wait until next time, and then I'll have something to talk about because I may not make a whole lot of progress on my works in progress, so it would give me something new to talk about for our next podcast.
Well, I got to own the FOs this week, and you get to own the work in progresses, and then we will share upcoming.
I don't think I have anything for upcoming, but okay.
Oh, you got something in there. Mm-mm. Okay. Oh no, those are all mine.
Those are all yours. It's just yours. Yeah.
Well, we'll trade off.
Okay, that's fine. Works. Give ourselves a break from talking so much. So I've got 2 works in progress that I'm going to show you, although I have a big weaving project over there, but I haven't touched it in a few weeks, so I'm not counting that. And it'd be really hard to, like, rejigger things so that could show you my loom. So anyway, I will talk about one of the first things on my needles, and it is the Asti Spumante sweater. And there it is. Hopefully it's showing up okay on the camera. It's always hard to get the lighting just right, and it is in the evening here, so we had rigged up some lights so that hopefully the lighting is okay. So this sweater I'm actually knitting for another friend of mine who's a shepherd. That's a great thing when you become a shepherd. I had already known a bunch of people from the yarn store because we carry a lot of local farms yarns in the yarn store. So I had the great pleasure of meeting and working with a number of different farmers and shepherds before I even became a shepherd myself, and so many of them are just fantastic people who have mentored me and just I've been able to bounce ideas off of. So anyway, this sweater I'm knitting for Catherine of Hands and Heart Farm. So this is her yarn, and she raises Border Leicesters and Romneys. And she has some really, really lovely yarns. So this is her yarn. This is the main color that I'm using. And this is actually a Border Leicester Romney and a little bit of merino blended together too. And it is basically, it's a worsted weight yarn. And it's a nice smooth worsted weight yarn. And Catherine is just a really lovely, lovely human. And you can see that. So it's 200 yards and it's about a 4-ounce skein. So it's a really nice dense yarn. So it's going to be really a really nice warm sweater. And then so you need 2 colors for the sweater. And this is, I don't have the ball band up here, but this is a DK weight. So they're spun differently. This is actually, her worsted is a 3-ply. And then the DK is a 2-ply, but it's kind of a much more lofty 2-ply, so it's working really well in this piece together. So you have this little crossover cable, and then the little color work blips in there. So the Asti Spumante tee is by Baby Cocktails or Thea Coleman, and there is, I didn't take it out of there's probably glare on it. I don't have a little screen facing me, so I can't see that. But I will link to this in show notes. And it's a really, really lovely pattern. But it's one of those that you have to pay a little bit of attention to. It's really easy to read where you are in the pattern, so I don't have to keep referencing the chart for it. Because it's pretty easy to memorize it and just look at where you are in the knitting and keep going based on that. So that's really helpful, but you do have to pay a little bit of attention and make sure you're doing your either your color work in the right spot or the cable crosses when you need to get there. And the other thing that Catherine wanted that I'm going to do is this is a short sleeve sweater, and Catherine did want me to add sleeves to that. So I will be doing that. It's a drop shoulder, but then they she has picked up ribbing along the edge. So what I'll do is, instead of doing the ribbing right away, is I'm just going to knit plain down, because I think because it's drop shoulder, it would be a little bit strange to continue the pattern going perpendicular to the original pattern. But then when I get to right before where the cuffs start, I'll put one little section of the pattern back in, just to kind of tie it all together. So I think that'll look really, really cute. So that is my plan for that anyway. So that's project number 1. And then project number 2, I'm making a mess of yarn down here, is Soric, which I will show you the picture of first. So it comes from the Shetland Trader book, which is a Gudrun Johnston book. It just came out this fall. It's a fantastic book. I think almost all of the patterns in it are using fingering weight, like Jamieson and Smith jumper weight yarn. I think there might be a couple that use a heavier yarn, but this is fingering weight, and a lot of the projects are fingering weight, and there's some, a lot of tunics, there's some dresses, things like that. So nothing for the faint of heart, but so this is the little Sork jumper tunic that I'm going to make, and I'm making the shorter version. There's 2 versions. There's a shorter version and a longer version, which you could wear more like a dress. But that is what I'm making. And just so you have an idea of colors, I am using primarily all Jamieson and Smith, but I do have a couple colors that are Jamieson's of Shetland. So there's 2 companies, if you're not familiar with this, that have very similar names. There's Jamieson's of Shetland, which they are most known for their spindrift, and then there's Jamieson and Smith, and they're 2 separate companies, so their labels look different. But it can be very confusing because of the names. So this is my primary color. So most of the tunic is going to be this really lovely green, and it is color number FC62 mix. And I'll put all of this in my Ravelry page, and I'll link to that in show notes so that if you're interested in any of the colors that I use, you can find those. So let me hold up my colors that I'm using. Oops. So it takes your main color and then 5 other contrast colors, and these are my contrast colors. So I've got dark blue, medium blue, and then kind of an orangey rust color, more of a golden color, and then kind of like a wheat color. So those will all be colors that I'm using. So this is the fingering weight version, the 2-ply jumper weight, often called, or in Jamieson's case, it's the spindrift. So I will be using all of those and working on it. It's a lot of stockinette, so it's great for like sitting and watching TV or knit group knitting when you don't want to have to pay a whole lot of attention to a pattern. I did just start doing the decreases not too long ago, but they're every I think 14 rounds or something, so I don't have to pay a whole lot of attention before I do the decreases. And I typically put a stitch marker in so I know where the decrease is, so I'll know when I'm getting close to having to do another. But it does have this really nice little hem detail, a folded hem on it, which for something like a tunic, it gives it a little bit of weight to it, which is really nice. So you actually cast on with one of your other contrast colors, so you get this really cute little color on the back side, this little stripe of color, which I thought is kind of nice. And it also makes it much easier when you go to pick up your hem, because you knit it right in when you get to that point. So yeah, those are my works in progress, current works in progress anyway. I've got a lot of works in progress just kind of sitting around, but you know, I won't talk about all of those because that would take all of 2022 to talk about.
I like that mustard color.
Yeah, this one?
Yeah.
I won't have very much of it. I won't use very much of it, so I'll have quite a bit left.
That's way too small for me.
They have a DK weight too.
Something to talk about later.
Okay.
Which is a little bit of a segue to upcoming, because I think this is we're back to my section here. So one of the things I'm going to be starting when Kelly helps me cast on is I'm going to knit, and I'll let Kelly talk more about the pattern, but the gathering hat I don't know if that's going to show up very well, but there it is. Again, so you may be noticing a pattern that I like hats. They're small, and even at my relatively glacial pace of knitting, I can see progress on kind of a daily basis, which helps me kind of keep going. But this was another flipping through Instagram. I think we found this on Green Mountain Spinnery's page, and I said, ooh, I like that. And I think, as I said often is, my follow-up question was, is that going to frustrate me? And Kelly looked at the pattern, and I do need to learn. You'll have to tell them what it's called. There's a new stitch for me in here.
Purl through the back loop. So he hasn't
Purl through the back loop.
Hasn't done that before, and there's a center double decrease. So he'll have to do that as well.
So if that's not going well, and I'm trying to knit during our next podcast, there may be a bit of bleeping. We'll try to keep this family friendly. But I wanted to do kind of an orangey color. I'm sure that you have a better name for what this color might be called, as well as maybe I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the yarn itself. So I'm not a student of yarn yet, as you may have started to get the hint. Like I said, with patterns and with yarn, I'm kind of in the I like that phase of my knitting hobby. So I don't know, is there anything that I or you or someone should tell them about either of these things?
So I can talk about the yarn a little bit more. So that pattern, we'll link to it in show notes too. It's a pattern by Kate Solomon, who's a lovely human at Green Mountain Spinnery. She works at Green Mountain Spinnery. And she's got lots of great patterns that she's put out there. So she's just an awesome person. And we love Green Mountain Spinnery. They have some fantastic yarns that I really enjoy working with too. So if you're new to Green Mountain Spinnery, I encourage you to go check them out because they're lovely individuals and a lovely company. So the yarn that he's going to use is one of my favorite yarns, and it is Juniper Moon Farm yarns, and it's their Moonshine, and in this case it's their chunky version. And if you go looking for the chunky, they no longer make the chunky. They discontinued the chunky, I think, a couple years ago, which I was really sad about. They still do make a worsted weight, and I think they actually have a fingering weight version now too. I haven't knit with a fingering weight, but because that was fairly new. I think that was new this year. But the worsted weight is really lovely too. It is a blend of merino, alpaca, and silk. So it is super soft, super warm. I have a sweater. Actually, I use this color for the sweater. It was an Alicia Plummer pattern, and I use this yarn, and it's one of the warmest sweaters too. So on really cold days, I'll probably be wearing that one too. So it's a single ply. So it's, if you haven't worked with single ply, it's a little bit different to work with. It really kind of after you've knit it, it kind of untwists just a little bit and floofs out. So if you knit it at a little bit of a looser gauge, you might look at this and be like, that doesn't look like a chunky. But as soon as you start knitting with it, it kind of plumps up. And also the alpaca in here too, that floofs out and really fills in any gaps. So it makes just a really great warm yarn. So I really enjoy it. It's a great yarn to knit with, and I've knit quite a lot out of both the chunky and the worsted weight version. So check that out. At least maybe not the chunky, because I can't really get it anymore, but the worsted weight. Yeah, when I heard they were canceling the chunky, we still had a bunch left in the store, and I was like, oh, well, I gotta just buy some, because if it's going away, I've got to make sure I have a little stash. So I've got a couple sweater quantities, actually, of not this color, but of other colors. I've got a gray and I think a white too in sweater quantities, and a couple like single skeins of different colors, so I can do some color work sweaters with it and make some more really cool leather sweaters. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to doing that. The other thing, and I actually want to say that it was in the same post from Green Mountain Spinnery maybe a week or two ago. It was another, I like that. Although I kind of knew the stitches by looking well enough that I don't think I had to ask the follow-up question of is that going to frustrate me? So It's the common cap, which is another, I think you said Kate Solomon
Yep.
pattern. So actually pretty similar to the 2x2.
It's actually similar to this one too, except it's just a longer version.
Much bigger brim to kind of fold up the way that this one is, but knit, just straight up knit stitches on top. So again, something that I can do fairly mindlessly without, like I said, too much frustration, if that's what you're looking for, as I usually am. And I think they showed that in a number of different color combinations. In the post that they had, and I think I'm gonna target that for something actually very close to. It was the reason that I eyed that mustard color that I had Kelly pick back up. There was a color combination they had, was kind of a narrow kind of mustard band, and then almost like a cranberry color for the rest of it. So probably gonna try to replicate that pretty closely, just so you don't think that the only thing I knit is well, actually, to this point, the only thing I have knit is hats. I guess to this point, that is a true statement. But I have started kicking around the idea of maybe asking Kelly to find a simple sock pattern, because I do, in these colder Vermont winters, wear a fair, kind of chunky hand knit socks quite a bit. Very, very, very warm. So. And I don't know. She's working on me for a cowl. She was really plugging the benefits of cowls in cold weather the last couple of days. So we'll see. I may branch out outside of hats, but that's where I'm at for now.
Have a sweater.
Yeah, I almost don't count that. Do I count that?
Well, at least
it was the project where I had the epiphany that I need to see some progress.
Yeah, so it's just a basic top-down raglan sweater, and he was making good progress on it, and I could see progress, but I think it was taking him a while to really feel like he was making progress. And of course, when it's top-down, you're increasing in stitches, so it feels like when you're getting to the point of separating for the sleeves, it feels like kind of a slog, because you get so many stitches. So
it's still around. There's plenty of yarn.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
So that's all I'm kicking around.
Okay.
Do you have upcoming stuff, or are you're just focused on the whip?
Well, I mean, I've got some upcoming stuff, but those are a ways out because I really want to get the sweater for Catherine done, and that's the one I'm pushing on because I don't like having things sitting out waiting for me. So. I do have that coming up. I do want to get that one done. I've got, I'm going to be teaching some classes. So we've got a really great high school. It's an after school, primarily for adults. I mean, kids can take the classes too, but they kind of gear it towards the community. One of the local high schools has a great program. You can take classes. They're usually evening classes. Anything from cooking to, I did a beekeeping class, jewelry making, knitting, languages, photography. I mean, they cover a whole range of things, and they have community members who specialize in doing these different things come in and teach. And so I'm teaching some crochet and knitting classes coming up, and so I have those all. They're releasing their next program of classes, I think this Friday. So I link to those on my website. So if you're local and you want to check those out, or just other programming that they've got going on, they've got some really great community members in to teach those classes. So they're really great opportunities. So I've got some samples that I've got to work up for those, and I'm doing some private lessons, so I have a few things to get ready for those. So nothing like big, but just little things that I've got to get finished up before then. But they're all spread out pretty good, so I don't have to cram to get that done. So the next segment that we're gonna do, although I've been talking.
You're gonna do.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it, I guess. I just feel like I've been talking a lot. And you're probably sick of hearing me. We're going to do is from the shop. So that's our farm shop, and we have on our website all of the products that we currently have on offer. And we've got some roving and yarn right now. We also have some greeting cards, so if you want pictures of the sheep, there's singles and little packs of cards, and little needle felting kits, and a few other things. So if you're interested in things like that, go check out the shop. And I will show you some of the wool that we have. And I should have grabbed ones that are not all cute and wrapped up in plastic, because with all the lights and everything, you're not going to really be able to see these. But we do have roving, and I've got it in 3 colors. And it's all from our sheep's wool. It is, so it's Shetland. So I've got black, I've got a nice medium gray, and hopefully you can see it a little bit. And then I have kind of a natural, kind of creamy white color here too. So those are the 3 colors that I have. I've got them in 4-ounce bumps, but you can buy it by the ounce on the website. You just put in however many ounces that you want to purchase. And so I will link to that. And then we also have our yarn. So this is our first batch of yarn that was spun by the mill. And the roving I had done at another friend's mill, Kingdom Fleece and Fiber. Liz did all of the roving for me, so I'm using a couple different Vermont mills for our products. And then this yarn was spun for me by Junction Fiber Mill in White River Junction by Peg and Amanda. And so these were the 2 colors, the natural colors that we had done. So this is kind of that creamy white, and then there's a lighter gray. And I don't know if they'll show up very differently on camera. Hopefully they will. Sometimes camera pick up color better than what we're seeing, especially because it's getting a little bit later. So those are the 2 colors of the natural that I've got, and I've got just a couple skeins left of each of the natural colors. I did a trunk show at Must Love Yarn on Small Business Saturday in November, and sold a lot of the yarn that we did have, and the naturals were really popular. But then I did naturally dye some, so on both the white and the gray, I over dyed it. This is logwood, so it makes this really lovely purple. And then this one, I have to remember what they all are. This one is madder and cochineal, and then I also put a little bit of iron in, so it kind of changed color, dulled it down a little bit. So it's kind of this really pretty red, rusty red color. And this one is Miraballin, which gives us yellow, and then it was dipped in indigo, so it's a nice green. And this one is too, but they're a little bit different shades. And that's the thing I love about natural dyes is, you can get some really interesting tonal qualities and different shades, even from the same dye bath. And these are both indigo. This is the indigo on white, and this is the indigo on gray. So, just based on the number of dips that you do, you get some different colors and different shades of the yarn. So you can get a lot of really kind of interesting colors and effects. I'm having a little bit of a yarn avalanche over here. The best kind of avalanche to have. So these are actually, it's funny because sometimes when you over dye, you can't tell the difference at all between whether it was on the white base or the gray base. The logwood is definitely that way. It's really, really hard to tell the difference. But this color that I did, there was a really big difference. The one that's on the gray, which is this one here, was a much darker, more muted color, and the one on the white was a much more vibrant, bright color. I didn't grab any of the all cochineal, which is kind of a pretty pink color. Anyway, I do have that too. But this was a lot of different dye materials. This was weld and Brazil wood that I started with, and it was a very light color. So then I added some marigold and madder root as well. So then I got this, because I really wanted something vibrant. So I got this really nice vibrant color. So this yarn is basically like a heavy DK light worsted. The gray ended up being a little bit denser, so there's 213 yards in 4 ounces for this one, and then the white, there's 226 yards for 4 ounces. So very, very similar, but just a little bit different yardage. They can definitely be knit together, and you won't have any issues knitting them in the same project. So that's what we've got in the shop right now, and I'll link to everything in show notes so that you can find it if it's of interest to you. And if you end up finding this podcast sometime down the road, never fear if we've sold out. We're going to have more, so we've got a lot more sheep. But sometimes just the whole process, because you have to have them sheared, and then there's some steps that I have to do, and then, depending on how much of a backlog the mill has, there's a little bit of a waiting and a process. So for getting great local yarns. So that's what we've got from the shop.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I have to show our cute little tag, because whoops. There's our cute tag. Then there's info on the back about the yarn.
So I think we're down to kind of talking about some segments we didn't do this time, but we hope to in the future. So I'll introduce the first one. Well, and actually the second one's kind of mine too. So we'll give Kelly's voice a rest. But in any case, so I think I jokingly brought up the idea of doing a podcast, and I said, you know what we should call it? We should call it the Tipsy Farmer. So Kelly and I, as probably many of you do, sometimes enjoy an adult beverage at the end of the day. And so we didn't decide to bring out a can or a bottle of something this time, but we may do a tasting of beer. We've obviously, in Vermont, we've got a lot of great local microbrews that we enjoy trying different ones. Sometimes we enjoy a glass of wine in the evening, and I even enjoy scotch. So
I do too, just not as often. Right.
So don't make it sound like I need to go to a meeting. So in any case, so we will occasionally, who knows, like I said, we didn't pull it together this time. Maybe it'll be in every other episode of the podcast. We'll kind of see where the Tipsy Farmer segment goes. But we'll give you some opinions of some local, probably local, sometimes from afar. Certainly you don't get local scotch in Vermont. But give you some tasting notes on some of our favorite beverages, or maybe not so favorite. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens. Can't like everything. So we'll see where that one goes. And the other one, so Kelly kind of alluded to it as well, that I've got my workshop that sits off the back of our garage, and I'm sometimes working on woodworking projects, metalworking projects. Sometimes they're farm related, sometimes they aren't. So we'll have to, in one of the future ones, maybe it'll have to be snapshots, but we probably won't do a roving selfie, at least this time of year for some of the projects that the building projects that we've done around the farm. But at the very least, maybe some stills of the addition that we put on the barn to get ready for our sheep adventure, and then last year a winter shelter for the rams. But we'll just keep you posted on what's going on in my workshop. Hopefully you enjoy that. There may or may not be a lot of crossover, like I say, with the farm or sheep or other things. But we'll keep you posted of what's going on there as well. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and then other things of interest, if there's things that anybody, once we kind of get rolling, and if there's things you want to see or want us to cover or talk about, he built our chicken coops, so we can kind of talk about our experiences with that, because we've had some things that we really like about the chicken coops, some things that we would change a little differently, because the chicken coops that we have, the two different ones, are built very differently. So, we're happy to have, a segment where maybe we talk about that part of it, our kind of trial and error, and if it saves somebody a little bit of time when they're either building their own or deciding on what features they want to have for, things like chicken coops. It doesn't have to necessarily be that. It could be any of the things that we're talking about. We're certainly happy to kind of talk a little bit more about that and other things as we go along. We're going to have a good-sized garden this year, so if that's of interest to you, we'll probably, as it gets a little closer, we're already planning. I have all the seed catalogs out on the dining room table, and so we're starting to think about planning that, getting our seeds going, and going from there. So now that I'm full-time on the farm, I definitely have a lot more time to devote to that. We've had a small garden, previous years. Last year it kind of fell apart. We did get some good stuff out of it. And we can grow tomatoes. Like our tomatoes, I better not jinx us.
Sandy soil.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. But anyway, any tips and tricks and things that we come across for the homesteading aspect of it, we're happy to share any of that and resources that we find useful too, because
we should use them as resources.
Yeah.
Like when we can't figure out why we can't grow broccoli. I don't know. Maybe it won't be broccoli, but
yeah,
the things that don't turn out. So if you've got tips for X, Y, or Z, that would be great to hear too.
Yeah, and we do have some other resources that we've gone to that we enjoy as well. So we're happy to kind of share that along the way as we go, and we'll try to keep it light and entertaining. And yeah,
I don't think there's any risk of it not being light and entertaining if we're considering a segment called The Tipsy Farmer.
Well, I know, but it's kind of risky being a married couple doing a podcast.
It is.
Well, it could be.
I hadn't thought about it.
The good news is we get along really well, so we enjoy spending time with each other. So hopefully,
we built a barn addition together.
We did too.
That we did.
And we're still married after that, so that's a good testament too.
That actually went quite well.
It did. It did go quite well. So
now we have to show them pictures.
Yeah, we will. We'll definitely, and you'll see pictures like actually on our Instagram. There's some pictures, so if you want to check that out, definitely go check that out. Go visit our website, visit our Instagram, and we'll try to put together another podcast episode in the next couple of weeks, probably, maybe sooner, but definitely keep an eye out for, if you don't see one next week, keep an eye out for them in 2 weeks. And I don't know how long this is going to take to get edited, because we'll see. But, yeah. I think that's it.
I don't know how you wrap these up.
We'll just say goodbye for now. Until next time.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.